Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. Secretary, will you please take roll?
Assembly members Anderson, Carter, Cole, Hardy, Howdigi, Kasama, Miller, Monroe Moreno, O'Neill, Roth, Torres Fawcett, Yeager, Urick, and Chair Marzola.
Here. Please mark Assemblymember Monroe Moreno absent excused and mark Assembly members present once they arrive. Welcome everyone that is here with us in Carson City, everyone joining us in Las Vegas, and anyone listening to us over the internet. Today we will hear two bills, Assembly Bill 223 and Assembly Bill 305. I will be taking those bills in order. Before we get started, I would like to make some housekeeping announcements. Members of the public may provide testimony in various ways, all of which are listed in the agenda. When testifying, please remember to turn on your microphone to speak and off to listen. Also remember to spell and state your name for the record. If you have handouts for the committee, please provide 20 copies to the committee secretary prior to your testimony. Committee information is available on the legislature's website. You may also watch our meetings through the legislature's YouTube channel. We ask that public comment be kept to 2 minutes each, so everyone interested in speaking can be accommodated. As always, I expect courtesy and respect in all our interactions, even if we may not agree. Finally, please remember to turn off or silence all of your electronic devices, especially your cell phones. That was a great reminder. With that, we will move to our first agenda item. I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 223. This measure revises provisions relating to the habitability of rental property. Welcome, Assemblymember Considine. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Marzola, Vice Chair Howdigi, and members of the committee. I am Venetia Considine, and I have the honor of representing Assembly District 18. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present Assembly Bill 223 to this committee. Assembly Bill 223 proposes a number of necessary changes to habitability law, all of which will ensure safer and healthier housing for all Nevada residents. We have all heard the stories from our constituents: black mold, broken air conditioners in the peak heat of summer, water that doesn't run, water that runs brown. Common sense tells us that no one should have to endure those living conditions while paying rent. Tenants facing habitability issues shouldn't face a lightning-fast summary eviction with nowhere to go and an unwarranted eviction on their record when they only expect a habitable home. But our current laws put people in that untenable position. AB 223 allows tenants to be proactive in resolving unsafe living conditions. It does this in 3 main ways. First, it removes vague terms like adequately and materially, eliminating arbitrary decisions in eviction cases. It removes language that has allowed loopholes that don't require unsafe conditions to actually be fixed. Second, AB 223 allows tenants to pay reduced rent when a landlord fails to comply with habitability laws. Third, and most importantly, it empowers tenants to file a verified complaint if they are forced to live in an uninhabitable condition but have not yet been taken to eviction court. In many cases today, the only way to get in front of a judge is at the request of the landlord. So this additional avenue will allow those cases access to our court system while in unsafe conditions. To walk us through the bill, I have 2 third-year law students here with me, Alice Sandberg and Casey Atherton, who are student attorneys in the Tenants' Rights Legal Residency at the UNLV Boyd School of Law. Through this experience, they represented tenants in habitability matters and have firsthand knowledge of how our current legal structure needs improvement. Also joining me today is Jonathan Norman from Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada and John Brogdon, a housing attorney with Nevada Legal Services, to help answer any technical questions you may have. Please note that as we go through the bill, we will be working off the amendment that I've provided to the committee. About an hour ago, we received another amendment from the Nevada Judges of Limited Jurisdiction concerning Section 4. We are happy to accept that as a friendly amendment, and we will get copies of that to you as soon as the hearing is over. But right now, I would like to invite Ms. Sandberg and Mrs. Atherton to continue the presentation.
Chair, members of the committee, my name is Casey Atherton. That's Kaceeatherton. Thank you to Assemblymember Considine for this opportunity. As mentioned, Alice and I are advanced clinic students in the tenants' rights legal residency that was funded by this body last session. Through that work, we have been able to practice as student attorneys under the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada, representing tenants in eviction proceedings. Before discussing AB 223, I'd like to start with a quick summary of the current process for resolving habitability issues. Tenants must give notice to their landlord of the habitability issue under NRS 118A.190 and .355. Depending on whether the issue involves an essential or non-essential service, the tenant must give the landlord either 48 hours or 14 days to make reasonable efforts to fix the issue. If the landlord fails to take action within this time, the tenant may lawfully withhold rent. This almost always prompts the landlord to initiate an eviction against the tenant for non-payment. If the landlord does not, the tenant is often left in limbo, living in an uninhabitable home but unable to access a court. Landlords moving forward with eviction proceedings leave written notice on their tenants' doors, and tenants then have 7 days to respond by filing an answer, which kickstarts an eviction proceeding against them. Then the landlord has 30 days to file a complaint, after which a hearing is scheduled. This is the only legal proceeding in Nevada where the defendant bears the burden of filing their answer before the plaintiff files their complaint. Before the hearing, the tenant must deposit any withheld rent into the court's escrow account. Tenants are often unaware of this requirement or how to comply with it, and since most tenants represent themselves, this is where they typically lose their habitability defense. Without putting rent in escrow, the tenant's habitability defense will fail, no matter how egregious or dangerous the ignored habitability issue is. It is important to emphasize that tenants who miss even one step in the process of raising a habitability defense will almost certainly be evicted. In our experience, the best outcome during a hearing is a status check, giving the landlord time to fix the uninhabitable condition. The law only requires good faith and best efforts to resolve these issues. We've seen the court take the landlord's word at face value and move on. Eventually, the court stops granting status checks, releases the escrowed funds to the landlord, and expects the tenants to continue paying rent, even if the issues remain unsolved. We believe we can all agree that tenants should have safe and healthy housing, be able to request repairs from their landlord, be able to protect themselves and their families when landlords fail to comply with the law after repeated documented repair requests, and not be required to pay full rent when their landlord fails to provide habitable housing. NRS 118A was designed to turn these shared beliefs into actionable rights. In practice, however, the law falls short. AB 223 updates rather than overhauls this process. As student attorneys, we have seen firsthand how the law plays out in court. AB 223 applies that real-world insight to improve fairness, dignity, and justice for Nevada's tenants. One of our clients experienced how current habitability laws fail tenants. We've anonymized this client, whom we're going to call Jane. Jane's story starts in the middle of the Las Vegas summer, where the heat is relentless and brutal. If you've ever visited Las Vegas during this time of year, you'll know that having a working AC unit is critical. As temperatures outside were rising, Jane ran her AC unit nearly every day to escape the heat. However, something was very wrong in her apartment. The AC unit was kept tucked away from the main bedroom and living areas, so she didn't know something was wrong until her carpet was soaked and her furniture was water damaged. Jane's AC unit was leaking. It was so severe that black mold was spreading over the walls and mushrooms were sprouting from the floor. We were astounded to hear that these issues were possible in Nevada's dry climate. After conducting research about the issues that Jane was experiencing, it became clear that something was seriously wrong, something that her landlord neglected for a very long time. Jane stopped running her AC to stop the mold and mushrooms from growing. She asked her landlord to repair these issues, and twice, the landlord sent unlicensed maintenance workers to come to Jane's apartment to inspect, but no repairs were made. Her AC unit continued to leak while she went without AC. Jane finally sent a formal letter to the property manager detailing the mold and mushroom growth caused by the still unrepaired AC unit. This letter went ignored. After the required 14-day period, Jane withheld the next month's rent. Instead of addressing the issues, her landlord initiated an eviction for non-payment. Jane continued asking for repairs, and these requests went ignored until the day before her scheduled hearing. The landlord sent someone to her apartment, not to make actual repairs, but to cover up the problems. This worker scraped the mushrooms out of the carpet and spray painted over black mold. At the hearing the next day, the landlord told the court that the habitability issues had been resolved and demanded all of Jane's withheld rent. Despite our client bringing evidence that the landlord had covered up this issue instead of fixing it, the court granted a status check, which turned into 2 subsequent hearings over multiple months. Jane's landlord made no further efforts to resolve the issues. To note, Jane still did not have AC and suffered without cool air the entire summer and warm fall months. She could see the writing on the walls. The landlord's effort was good enough for the court, and the mold and mushroom issues weren't going to be fixed. She would be forced to pay her landlord the withheld rent or be evicted from her home. Tenants like Jane should not face relocation as their only option. For families with children, this can mean unexpected school changes and high moving costs. AB 223 is a meaningful step forward towards a more equitable and safe housing for tenants. No one should have to choose between unsafe living conditions and the threat of eviction. This bill ensures tenants have legal protections that they deserve. Now, I'm going to turn things over to Alice, who will walk the committee through AB 223 and the amendment.
Hi, my name is Alice Samberg, ALICESAMBERG. I'll walk the committee through AB 223 and its amendment and explain how these changes address the unintended barriers created by Chapter 118A as it stands today. I'll begin with Sections 2 and 3 and work forward from there. Beginning with 2 and 3, these sections create new definitions where there has previously been ambiguity. Section 4 creates a right for a tenant to file a verified complaint for expedited relief with the court if the tenant has provided with the court that their landlord received a written notice of the habitability issue but did not remedy the issue within the statutorily prescribed time period. Section 4 also outlines substantive terms that would be included in the complaint, the process the tenant would follow for filing the complaint, and the court's hearing on the complaint. If the court finds that the landlord has violated habitability law, it may grant relief under this section. One important potential remedy outlined by this section is the abatement of rent owed by the tenant for the period of the landlord's noncompliance. This provision is a response to a frequent situation that we've seen play out in court. When the landlord ignores the tenant's habitability issue, the tenant must decide between risking an eviction by withholding their rent or remaining silent and continuing to live in legally non-compliant housing. The only way a tenant can push for repairs is to escalate the issue, withhold their rent, and wait for their landlord to file an eviction proceeding against them. At this point, they would be able to assert a habitability defense before a judge. Until that point, tenants are forced to live in uncomfortable and even dangerous situations. Some tenants might be able to mitigate this by staying with family or friends, or maybe some might even be able to afford to stay in a hotel or Airbnb, but most cannot. Last November, Casey and I met a couple that was experiencing this exact issue. The heater in their apartment was broken, and their landlord ignored their concerns. They were new to the area and could not afford even one night stay in a hotel. On top of it, the couple had a newborn baby. They were terrified of staying in their unheated apartment and were worried how it would impact the health of their infant. But they had no choice in this situation other than to withhold their rent and wait for their landlord to initiate the eviction against them. Providing an avenue for expedited relief where a tenant could file a complaint would empower tenants like this couple to access the court instead of remaining stuck in unsafe housing and subject to the landlord's action or inaction. Sections 6 and 7, while important, have been removed by the friendly amendment provided by Assemblymember Considine as they are being addressed in other bills. Section 8 adds some clarity to written receipts and accounting where there has previously been ambiguity. Section 9 expands the list of conditions that must be present in a dwelling unit for the unit to be considered habitable. This section adds to the existing list that a landlord must provide permanent measures to control the presence of vermin and to limit tenant exposure to harmful materials like toxic mold. It also would require a landlord to keep all doors and windows in good repair, require them to place locks on all exterior-facing doors and windows, and keep those locks in good repair. Lastly, it also requires the landlord to provide safety equipment required by law to be in the dwelling unit. This amendment ensures that each dwelling unit meets basic living standards. It would increase the average individual's health and safety by reducing exposure to inclement weather and drafts, limiting the presence of vermin that carry disease and cause property damage, reducing the risk of mold growth and subsequent exposure symptoms, and deterring unauthorized entry into the dwelling unit. Moving on, Section 10 addresses the fact that Chapter 118A currently only requires landlords to make quote-unquote best efforts to remedy breaches of habitability law. It does not require actual remedy. This section removes the best efforts language and requires landlords to actually remedy the uninhabitable condition that breaches Nevada law. If the landlord fails to do so, this section would permit the tenant to provide written notice of termination of the lease and to vacate the premises within 60 days. Right now, courts can and do accept a landlord's good faith effort as legally sufficient, even if the issue remains unresolved. This allows landlords to avoid legal and financial consequences while new tenants inherit the same problems. Section 11 amends NRS 118A 355. It expands the remedies available to tenants whose landlords are found by a court to have violated Chapter 118A. If the tenant submits a documented repair request, gives their landlord reasonable time to make repairs, but the landlord fails to do so, this section would allow the tenant to file a verified complaint, as discussed in Section 4, terminate their lease, recover actual damages as defined by Section 2, or withhold their rent until the landlord remedies the issue. Section 12 creates a similar remedy where a landlord is found by a court to have failed to provide an essential service. In that situation, Section 12 would allow the tenant to terminate their lease immediately or within 60 days after providing written notice of termination. It's important to highlight that Nevada habitability law already permits a tenant in these circumstances to terminate the lease, but AB 223 would refine this right and provide a reasonable amount of time for the tenant to gather their belongings and find a new residence. As the law is written right now, the right to terminate the lease is oftentimes impractical and it's inaccessible to most tenants because it permits immediate termination. No tenant can terminate their lease and move out of the residence by the same day. Section 13 enhances remedies for tenants when landlords unlawfully exclude them, willfully or negligently disrupt essential services or those required by the lease, or reclaim possession. In this section, a tenant may file a verified complaint for expedited relief to regain possession of their residence. They could proceed under NRS 118A 380, or this section would permit the tenant to terminate their lease and recover either 3 times of their periodic rent or actual damages, whichever is greater. If the tenant terminates the lease under this section, they would also be entitled to a full refund of prepaid rent and their security deposit and a reasonable amount of time to collect their belongings from the dwelling unit. Explicit language here would provide a tenant monetary recovery, it would deter landlords from engaging in unlawful behavior, and it would help tenants recover financial losses caused by this disruption to the dwelling unit. It's also important to note that the section explicitly grants tenants a reasonable amount of time to gather their belongings from the unit if they are excluded from the unit, then choose to terminate. Currently, there's no such guarantee in the law, which means a tenant who chooses to terminate their lease could be immediately excluded from the premises. Section 14 allows tenants to recover either actual damages or 5% of their periodic rent, whichever is greater, if the landlord fails to disclose information as required by the chapter. This amendment empowers tenants to demand transparency from their landlords, and it incentivizes landlords to timely comply with the law. Lastly, Section 15 expands the remedies available to tenants whose landlords have unlawfully retained their personal property. For example, Casey and I have, we have an example from the Las Vegas eviction court, which illustrates the importance of this language. After evicting a tenant from her apartment, the tenant's landlord refused to let her return into the unit to retrieve life-saving medication that she needed to manage chronic physical symptoms. Without this medication, the tenant's physical well-being rapidly declined. And despite knowing how important the medication was, the landlord essentially held this woman's medication for ransom. He told her that the only way that she could repossess her personal belongings was by paying all of the back-owed rent she owed to the landlord. And like so many other tenants that we see in eviction court, the woman had fallen on hard times and couldn't afford to do that. In cases like this, intentionally withholding a tenant's personal property can be dangerous and even life-threatening. Section 15 expands remedies available to tenants in this situation. I'll pass it back to Assemblymember Considine.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to go back to what I had mentioned earlier about the amendment that we received from the Nevada judges of limited jurisdiction that would fit into Section 4, subsection 4. Page 6, if you look at line 13 of the original bill, they have requested that it says the court shall conduct a hearing on a verified complaint filed pursuant to subsection 1 not later than 7 judicial days after the filing of the complaint. What they would like added is, unless for good cause shown to the court to extend such time. So we will get you that amendment, but I wanted to add it since we were going over amendments. Before we go to questions, I just want to be clear that nothing in AB 223 prohibits a landlord from working with the tenant. And at this point, I would like to bring up Jonathan Norman and John Brognan to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. We will start with Assemblymember Torres Fawcett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. I know that this is an issue that has come up by many of my constituent groups, and just like the need for us to be able to address some of these issues a little bit quicker. So my first question is regarding the timeline, and I might have another question, but I can wait too, Chair, if you'd prefer. But just reading through Section 4, it does say that the tenant has to provide written notice to the landlord, and the landlord fails to remedy the failure to maintain the dwelling unit in an uninhabitable condition, then the tenant can file a complaint for expedited relief. Can you walk me through what this timeline looks like as it's written in the bill and what the vision is for it to look like? So how long, like at what point, so the tenant has notified their landlord, at what point are they able to now stop making those payments? Like, what does that look like? How much time do I have to give as a tenant in order for this process to be initiated?
Jonathan Norman for the record, JONATHAN-NORMAN, Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. So in the conceptual amendment, we have in Section 4 that it will say must be filed with the court no later than 15 judicial days after the last day for the landlord to make the repair under the notice period in NRS 118A.355. And that's a notice period we already use in the law, so you have to provide that written notice, and then the landlord has 14 days to make that repair and complete the repair. And then after that period, you can file the verified motion, and you have up to 15 days to file that motion for verified motion.
Thank you. And if I could have a follow-up, Chair? Go ahead. Okay, thank you. And I guess I noticed that in the legislation later, it says that money would be put into an escrow account. Can you explain how that would work? Is a tenant still making payments somewhere so that that money would be essentially saved away I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah, Jonathan Norman for the record. So once a tenant files the verified motion for expedited relief, they can withhold the rent and they do not have the obligation to escrow the rent. They have to withhold it. There is a separate escrow provision that is in a later section that if the tenant uses that section and they have not filed, so they've waited for the landlord to file the eviction, Jonathan Norman for the record, I think I missed that. If they don't file that expedited motion and so they are waiting to be evicted, they have to escrow that money. And then we added a provision in there that says it's not a defense to a summary eviction. This was already in the law. It's not a defense to a summary eviction that you're late on your rent if you didn't properly escrow the money. But we did add a judicial discretion so that the judge, if they determine that the tenant can come current at the hearing, they have the discretion to not order the eviction.
Thank you. Just a quick statement, sorry, Chair. And I just would appreciate if there was something done maybe to ensure that, tenants weren't because if you're withholding rent for multiple months on end, then in your bank account, you're looking at it and you're like, oh, okay, I have $5,000, right, extra than what I usually have. And so I think it makes it much harder for individuals to budget and to plan if those funds are not put in escrow for those individuals that are withholding rent. So if something, I'm just concerned that working class Nevadans might have a hard time making sure that they have what's needed when they have to make that payment. At what point do they have to make the payment? How much time? Let's say, okay, now finally repairs are made, right? And it's been too long, but finally repairs are made, and it's like 2 months later. At what point do I have to pay this money?
Jonathan Norman for the record. So if it's in the case where you filed a motion for expedited relief, when you come before the court is going to be able to make the decision and designate that money going into an escrow account. But up until that point, you don't have that obligation. Now, ideally, in any circumstance, I would hope that landlords aren't getting their rent, so they have an incentive to move their case, right? So I'm hoping that these cases move so you don't have months and months where the tenant is withholding the rent on their own. And then in the instance that you're escrowing the money because you didn't have the wherewithal to file a verified complaint, because that takes action on the tenant's behalf. So if you're just waiting for that eviction and you need to escrow that rent money right away.
Assemblymember Cole.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I do have lots of questions, but I'm only going to keep it to one. So my question is on page 10. So it's under section 8. When we're talking about the effective measures in place to control the presence of rodents, insects, and vermin, and prevent exposure to unsafe levels of radon, et cetera. I think there may be a need to define some terms as far as what does effective mean. I'd like to understand if this is on the premises or if it's in the dwelling unit, because if we're talking about insects, then you're going to have a landlord coming into the space, into the dwelling unit every month to spray. And I don't know if that's something that everybody would want. And then now that we have mosquitoes in Las Vegas, fun fact, if anybody doesn't know that, we have mosquitoes in Las Vegas. It's virtually impossible to effectively control those if it's just one apartment unit or apartment complex amongst a whole bunch of other people that have issues. So I just think there needs to be some work on that.
Jonathan Norman for the record. I think we can work to clarify that language and tighten it up. I honestly had not thought and envisioned mosquitoes. Not that we're in the desert. I just hadn't thought of them as being encompassed in this, just because that's typically caused by standing water outside. But I think we can work on tightening that section up.
Okay, now I'm not prepared for that, but so there are a couple of spots in here where we talk about the written receipt from the landlord, and we actually say signed by the landlord. I think that's going to be problematic for a lot of landlords, especially if they have a mechanism by which you pay online and you get an email receipt. that would not technically be signed by the landlord. So I think that needs to go away.
Thank you. John Brogdon, spelled Johnbrogden. I believe that an e-signature would be acceptable under the way this is written, but I think that's perfectly reasonable to clarify it.
Vice Chair Howdigy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. My first question, I'm looking at Section 4, Sub 2C, where it's saying that a verified complaint, must state, and then C says, an estimate of what the tenant believes is the diminution, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, of the value of the dwelling unit. And as a homeowner, I have zero idea what things cost, right? When plumbing's out, like when my garbage disposal goes out, or, there was a little leak in my roof that, caused the ceilings to have to be torn out. Like, I have zero idea what things are gonna cost until I actually call someone to come take a look at it, whether it's a plumber, my home warranty, my insurance company. So how do we expect a tenant to know what these things are gonna cost, or give them the responsibility of having to say, like, hey, this costs, $100, or it costs $2,000?
Jonathan Norman, for the record. Thank you for the question. I can't pronounce that either. I just say diminution. I will say that it is not how much it costs to be repaired that they're asked to make an estimate of. It's what the value of it is. And so, it becomes one, we don't want to have a situation where we're bringing experts into landlord-tenant case to testify about the value of a sink, right? We don't want to have people testifying a working sink is valued at this amount. So we want the tenant to say, and it would be fact specific, right? Because, if you have a house that has, let's say, 3 sinks, right? And you have 1 sink that's non-functional. Well, that's a different value than if you have a house that has 2 sinks, right? Or if the number of people living in the house would change. So this is just them putting out that this has this value to me. And I think it becomes hard if you get too prescriptive, because if you say, because there definitely is, if you have anything that you have bargained for in your lease that is not working, that has value to you, right? It was in the lease, or it was in what the apartment complex presented as, these are our amenities. We have, 3 bathrooms, 3 showers. So there's going to be value to every piece of that. And I just don't know that we want to be too prescriptive about what that value is. And some people have asked me, well, why wouldn't you put a percentage of rent to each thing? And I said, this could cover anything in habitability. And so the idea is the tenant would put forth that amount in that complaint. And then it would be the judge who's weighing the evidence. The landlord would, on the other side, say, well, you only have 1 person living there.
Thank you. And so I guess you're just, so basically it's up to each tenant to decide the value of this air conditioner. It could be one tenant and another tenant both renting the exact same place, but each one comes up with a different amount saying, hey, the value of my air conditioner to me is 100% of my rent, and to someone else, it could be the value of my air conditioner is worth 75% of my rent. So you're leaving it to the tenant to decide what the value is to them.
Yeah, Jonathan Norman, for the record. I think in that initial complaint, and then it's ultimately going to be the judge who is setting what the value is, right, in the judicial proceeding. But I think, yes, we have to set something out there without having experts coming in to testify about the value of, say, an air conditioning or a sink not working or a broken window.
That wasn't my follow-up, Madam Chair. That was a follow-up to that question. I do have one more question. So it's Section 4, Sub 4, where it's talking about not later than 7 judicial days after the filing of the complaint, the court must hear the case. So I'm going to take the city of Henderson. They meet 4 days a week, right? So if a tenant files their complaint on a Thursday, then we have
Saturday, we have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then we start counting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then you have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so it's like 13 calendar days from when that complaint was filed, right? And I think about it from both sides, right? So I think about it from the tenant not being able to get in front of a judge for 13 calendar days from when they filed that complaint, and also for the landlord who might not be receiving rent, going 13 calendar days. Because the way I read it, and it's similar to my colleague's question, was if on day 29, my landlord has not fixed this, then I'm gonna file a complaint with my landlord and not pay rent on the 1st. And then he has 14 days to fix it, so I haven't paid rent. And now he has 14 days to fix it, and he doesn't fix it after those 14 days, and I get busy or something, and I don't file my complaint with the courts till the 15th day. Now that's 29 days, right? And so I haven't paid rent in 29 days, and then we still have an additional 13 days before the court can see me. So that timeline just feels long, one for both. The tenant who has to live in those conditions, which are horrific from the stories we've heard, that shouldn't be the case, right? That's horrific. But now that's a really long period. And then also for it could be for the potential landlord who may not be receiving rent either for that very long extended period of time, almost 45 days.
Yeah, Jonathan Norman for the record. I am for anything that accelerates that timeline. But I would say that at least for the landlord side of things, the power is in their hands, right? They can make the repair. So if they are going without rent for 40 days because each one of these timelines is maxed out, that is them not making the repair. I'm more sympathetic to the tenant having to live in those conditions and not being able to get in front of the judge. But I think we had to strike a balance, and 7 judicial days is what we came to. So, and you're right, how we're counting days, if you're in a court that doesn't have court on Friday, that 7 days is different.
Assemblymember O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Assemblywoman Howdy, for taking my question. But just by chance, I have another one or two. It's an interesting bill that you brought forward. It reminds me of one that we just heard a few days ago here in the committee. But are there other avenues the tenant can take with the health department on the safety issues, on the health issues, when you're talking about mold growing? So that didn't occur overnight. The air conditioner went out at 8, and by 9 o'clock, mold is growing. I mean, that's over several days, and it is a serious issue. So aren't there other avenues, statutes or ordinances that can also be addressed, and this is just duplication?
John Brogdon for the record. So yes, if somebody is living within a jurisdiction with city codes, they can always report that to the appropriate agency. But that can still wind up with them being on the defense in an eviction action, which then they would have to raise a retaliation defense, which is authorized under the law. However, I believe the bill is to make it so that the tenant does not have to be on the defense in an eviction action. They can be proactive and therefore not be at risk of homelessness.
I appreciate it. May I ask one more? In section 12, I may be overthinking this, or maybe, but it talks about what the landlord has to supply, electric, water, et cetera, a functional window, lock, functional safety equipment. Do we have that defined any place? Because I can think of burglar alarms, a variety of things, fire blankets, fire extinguishers. Do we have that defined? How extensive is that?
John Brogdon for the record. I believe that what's been envisioned is fire safety specifically, and whatever is required by local ordinance.
I didn't catch the very end. I'm sorry.
Whatever is required by local ordinance.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, sir.
Assemblymember Hardy.
Thank you, Chair. So I wanted to, and I think you may have touched on this earlier, but I just wanted to clarify it. In section 4, it's on page 6, letters B and C, where you say this could be consolidated with any action for summary eviction or unlawful detainer that's already pending or raised as a defense. So if I am understanding, those could all be consolidated into this habitability situation, and then would they all be decided collectively? Or, because summary evictions and unlawful detainers are, for other reasons. So would they all be decided together, or could those other cases still be, the tenant would still owe the rent, or would they be addressed separately or all together? If you could clarify that.
Thank you. John Brogdon for the record. It sort of depends. I apologize for the lawyer answer. So, I mean, if it's a non-payment of rent, that's going to be where it's going to be an issue with their withholding of rent. But, I mean, if you're talking about the other forms of unlawful detainer, such as the nuisance, the 30-day no cause, the lease violation, I believe this would still allow for it to be consolidated, but I did not, the way it's written now, I don't envision it being a defense to those sorts of actions.
And Jonathan Norman for the record. So when it is non-payment of rent, it should be consolidated because the nexus between them is if a tenant stopped paying because of the habitability issue, right? But for the other, for example, nuisance, it just wouldn't make sense to consolidate those in the same way, although the court could consolidate them.
Can I follow up? Yeah, I just would want to make sure that, especially for the non-payment, that is tied to the, habitability, that it's not, they were just not paying for some other reason not related to that. So thank you for the answer.
Assemblymember Yurick.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for taking our questions. I have kind of a two-part question. One is procedurally, and then is kind of a practical question as well. So I'm looking at the remedies that are afforded to a tenant under Section 4 that by Section 11 are not available to a tenant when the landlord can prove by clear and convincing evidence that it was the tenant's fault. So procedurally, I'm curious, what's the mechanism and at what point and who is making the decision on clear and convincing evidence for that specific case? And then practically speaking, so like in time, like how does that work? And I'm hoping you can clarify that for me. And then practically speaking, I think of something like, roaches, right? Talk about the infestation or something like that. How do we show, I mean, clear and convincing is a very high legal burden to meet, and this shift goes to the landlord to do that. For example, if somebody is, has a bunch of food, sugar, ants are getting in, like whatever is that's going on, or perhaps in these multifamily dwelling units where it isn't the landlord, but it's a neighboring unit that is doing that. How does all that impact this tenant and this landlord and their ability to assert this kind of defense of saying, hey, look, it's not my fault? Can you address those issues for me?
Thank you. John Brogdon for the record. So yes, that's a very good question. So as you know, summary eviction, there is case law that directly compares it to a motion for summary judgment, and that case directly cites Wood v. Safeway, and that case directly cites Anderson v. Liberty Lobby, which explicitly adopts a clear and convincing standard for the burden of the moving party. However, that's case law that's specific to NRS 253, arguably 254 as well, as 254 utilizes the procedures set forth in 253. However, that there's no case law that's going to show which way the burden should shift in this type of case, right? Most tenants are pro se. They're not going to have legal representation. They would be very easily steamrolled by most landlords who have attorneys. In practice, I mean, it's going to be I mean, that's a case-by-case kind of thing, right? Like, I mean, let's say hypothetically the landlord is fixing a plumbing issue where they're saying that grease has been poured down the drain, right? They're always going to say it's whatever tenant's in there. I think there's a better argument when that tenant's been there 15 years than when that tenant has been there about 6 months, right? So either way, that landlord is going to stick that on whoever's in there. More than likely, it was not the person who has been there for 6 months, right? That it generally takes time of pouring grease down the drain. But that does happen, so I don't know if that, do you have anything that you want to add?
Yeah, I think that having that burden, and I appreciate the example of if you have bugs, for example, and it's another unit, I would want the court to be making decisions and using judicial discretion to tease out those cases. And so I would envision a hearing where a judicial officer is making the determination.
Excuse me, sorry. Casey Atherton for the record.
I don't mean to interrupt you. Hold on one second. Can you say your name?
Jonathan Norman for the
Thank
record.
you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Casey Atherton for the record. I know, like, in that specific instance that you're bringing up with roaches and trying to deal with those infestations, that was my living experience my first year of law school. And the landlord, it seemed like, you know, they were making, they would schedule people to come and take care of that. They would schedule regular sprayings to take care of the roaches. But the problem was my neighbor across the walkway leaving their trash out on, you know, by their front door, not taking it down to the trash. And that was something that was supposed to be enforced by the property manager. That was something that was written in the lease, and they just never dealt with that other tenant, never tried to enforce that provision of the lease. And so, you know, like, part of that too, right, is that we need to be able to see that they are enforcing these provisions in the lease. Like, I'm upholding my end of the lease. I'm doing my best to stay clean, and, like, I'm bringing up these issues to you. But, you know, if there are other issues with other tenants, as the landlord, you need to be able to step in and help me mediate this if I can't solve it on my own. That's your duty as a landlord. You're supposed to provide me with habitable housing, and that can't happen if you're not enforcing other provisions in the lease, like requiring people to take their trash down. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, for the clarification, because I want to go back to, I think that really what I appreciate about this bill is that it's attempting to go after the bad actors and the stories that you guys sold. I mean, that's just horrible, right? But I also want to be careful in our attempt to go after the bad actors. We're not unintentionally going after the good actors by giving bad actor tenants the ability, for example, to go in and say, ooh, I want out of this lease because there's a better I'm going to go date this guy or this girl, and there's a cheaper rent down the street, so I'm just going to let things go into disarray a little bit here, and I'm going to infest my place. And this burden shift that's required under this bill is going to put a significant burden back on potentially a good actor landlord, and it's going to empower bad actor tenants to take advantage of that. And then my fear is the unintended consequences of all that is now it just gets into a thing where tenants or landlords across the board are going to say, I need to mitigate this, and I'm going to have to raise rates. And now we've got other unintended consequences. So I just hope that you might be able to, I don't know how, but potentially in this bill address that issue to keep it going after what I think you're really here trying to do, and is to go after the bad actor landlords.
Jonathan Norman for the record. I think we can take a look at the burden and how it shifts there. But I would also say that if you are the tenant who is decided to court bugs, the landlord should be filing a nuisance eviction against you, right, and avoiding this process, because their obligation is to protect the other tenants' use and enjoyment of their units. And if those bugs are spilling out, then a landlord should take that action ahead of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, any additional questions? This is the time to ask your follow-up if you have any. Assemblymember Cole.
So I like I said, I had a lot of questions. So if there's any kind of stakeholder involvement or meetings, before the work session, I would be happy to be involved in that. So one question that I had on section 4, when we talk about the verified complaint, just looking at the description of what that is, I'm not seeing any proof that's to be provided, pictures, documentation, any kind of information. It's just a description of what the issue is. So I think to be verified, we should have verification.
Thank you. John Brogdon for the record. Generally, that verification is just the petitioner's attestation, but for most of because this already exists for essential service and lockouts, right? It's kind of hard to prove that you've been locked out, right? So I mean, most of the time in those cases, the court will take somebody's word for it. As far as essential service items, generally, if there's a question of it, the courts will require some sort of picture or documentation, or at least most of the justice court judges that I know, so.
Thank you. I don't see any additional questions. I just have 2 quick questions. Majority of my questions have been answered. Back to my colleague's question on section 4, subsection 4, having to do with 7 judicial days. So I'm wondering why not 7 calendar days, which I think would expedite the process both for the tenant and the landlord.
Jonathan Norman for the record. I don't think I can speak for the Assemblywoman, but I would certainly think that is reasonable.
So if you can look into that, please, that would be great. I think a lot of my colleagues would agree that expediting it for both sides, I think, is very important. And my second question is, and I don't know if you have this, do you have any data to where it shows how many complaints are filed or how many tenants come to legal aid with the habitability issue?
John Brogdon for the record. I spoke about this with my counterpart before coming here, and I don't know that we have any data. My organization doesn't request that from the courts, and we only represent the tenants that we represent. However, I've been doing this for 4 years, as has my counterpart, and both between Las Vegas and Reno, I think both of us have seen somebody successfully raise the habitability defense 1 time each. It's very rarely actually successfully raised, and generally the hindrance is that placing the money in escrow. There's a lot of confusion about the way that occurs now. So I don't believe it is very commonly successful.
And Jonathan Norman for the record, what I would say, and there are groups that were court watching over the past interim, so just going and observing and collecting data at Las Vegas Justice Court primarily, and I think maybe at North Las Vegas as well. And what you often see is how habitability presents itself is a tenant is there on the eviction, they have their phone, and they say, "Judge, I have pictures," and it can be, sewage backing up in their bathtub. It can be, really horrific stuff, and the judge looks at them and then asks if they escrowed the rent. And the answer is almost always no, because people don't understand how they're supposed to do that, how they can take advantage of that. And then the judicial officer orders the eviction. And so then, not only are they not exercising their right to a habitable dwelling, but whatever issue it is, does it get fixed between them and the next tenant, right? And they're just evicted. They were not successful in raising that defense because of that escrow component that they weren't able to navigate. And I would say another, if you're wondering how habitability functions right now, I would say either Nevada Legal Service or Legal Aid Center's website has a very good explanation, and you would have to read it a few times, I think most people would. And for our pro se litigants, it's impossible to make sure that they are doing everything right, and so they will just be evicted.
Thank you for that information. Committee members? I don't see any. So if you guys can go ahead and step back so that I can start testimony in support to Assembly Bill 223. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support to Assembly Bill 223? Please remember to state and spell your name. Please remember that you have 2 minutes each. We have a lot of people wanting to testify on both sides, and so we want to make sure that we are accommodating everyone. You may begin when you're ready.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ben Innes. That is B-E-N-I-N-E-S-S. I'm the Coalition Coordinator for the Nevada Housing Justice Alliance. We are a statewide coalition of grassroots organizers and community advocates. We work directly with impacted community and primarily tenants to fight for solutions that really address the root causes of our state's housing crisis. I think so many of us have already seen this session. Housing is like a singular issue and a focal point. And so often we say that if we're going to take the crisis seriously and with urgency, then to consider all tools that are available and at our disposal, meaning that, plan for the future sustainably so, but also implement, helpful laws and protections that address things now. So again, it's one thing is to hope for housing in the future opposed to protecting it and how we treat it right now in the present moment. And second thing I'll add is that, tenant is not a fringe identity. It's not this like small subclass. City of Reno is majority renters. City of Las Vegas is nearly majority renters. So, almost 1 out of 2 of us, some districts are majority renters. And the UNLV Center, UNLV Lead Center put out a study last year showing the cost burden levels of Nevada tenants. I think we are second to the state of California, meaning 60% of renters are feeling that squeeze and that crunch of the pressures of affordability and stability. That applies to habitability as well. One thing I want to quickly add, the empowerment we seek for tenants is so that they can live with dignity and safely and stably. It's not about creating loopholes that they can exploit for their own gain. Jonathan Norman mentioned our court watching that we conducted throughout the interim. Our partners throughout Las Vegas observed hundreds and hundreds of eviction court hearings to assess some evictions. How close?
If you can go ahead and wrap up
All
your
right, so I'll skip that. So this bill raises the floor for tenants, and too often these issues go unchecked. And so again, we want folks to live safely, stably, with dignity, and so on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and the committee. My name is Cal Boone, spelled C-A-L-B-O-O-N-E. Here testifying in support. I'll keep it very brief. I think this bill gives more power to tenants and greater accountability to landlords. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Zola and members of the committee. My name is Jamelle Nance. That is J-A-M-E-L-L-E-N-A-N-C-E. And I am here representing the Children's Advocacy Alliance in support of AB 223. I want us to really take a look at this bill in the lens of our youngest Nevadans. Imagining a young child growing up in a home with mold, breathing in that mold, really thinking about the conditions, as was stated earlier, of our summers, and preventing our children from entering into the child welfare system. Sometimes that looks like neglect on many ends, and so we want to prevent that from happening. I have had the opportunity to sit in eviction court watching. It is an eye-opening experience, and I will say that many parents don't know what to do in those situations. They do take their pictures, and by the time they get to eviction court, it's too late. And so I am urging your support of this bill on behalf of the Children's Advocacy Alliance to give our parents other options to be able to give their child the best start at a great future.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tara Webster, T-A-R-A-W-E-B-S-T-E-R. I'm the policy manager with the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada here in support of AB 223. The Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada believes that rental housing should be a safe and healthy sanctuary for all.
Providing a habitable home is the minimum standard of human decency, and landlords and property owners have a fundamental obligation to ensure that their housing doesn't jeopardize the tenant's health, safety, or quality of life. Tenant protections promote upward mobility for families and stability within our communities, and these benefit renters, all renters. However, a lot of these protections are especially vital for those at higher risk of eviction or housing instability, including low-income households and communities of color. AB 223 represents a crucial step forward for tenant protections in our state that implements safeguards to improve living conditions, reduce health risks, and promote long-term stability. We support this bill because it empowers Nevada residents to prioritize their well-being and economic advancement without having the burden of living in an unsafe housing environment. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tia Smith, T-I-A-S-M-I-T-H. I'm a policy attorney with ACLU of Nevada. We support this bill and urge the committee to support it as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Serena Evans, S-E-R-E-N-A-E-V-A-N-S, and I'm the Policy Director for the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. Housing stability and safe environments are intrinsically connected to domestic violence intervention and prevention, which is why we are a proud member of the Nevada Housing Justice Alliance and a vocal advocate for tenant rights in Nevada. In a study analyzing crime prevention through environmental design, researchers found that inhabitable housing conditions increase the risk factors for familial and domestic violence. As a state that routinely ranks in the top states for rates of domestic violence, we have a duty to intervene and reduce risk factors at every level, starting with our housing systems. At its core, housing stability, including habitable environments, is violence prevention, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Leanne McAllister, Leanne-McAllister. I am the Executive Director of the Nevada chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. We currently have 290 members, all pediatricians who live and work in the state of Nevada. No child should live in a home with high levels of indoor air pollution, but for children with asthma and other chronic conditions, this is especially critical. A clinical report from the American Academy of Pediatrics shows that reducing the exposure of a child with asthma to indoor allergens and pollutions such as mold and pests like cockroach and rodents can be as effective as medication to control the disease. Each year, I hear dozens of stories from pediatricians who have done what they could by writing letters to landlords imploring that they maintain their properties to meet the health needs of children. Some are moved by such requests, but far too many are not, making this law necessary. I urge you to support AB 223. Thank you.
For the record, my name is Mark Ellis, M-A-R-C, E-L-L-I-S, with Communication Workers of America. We support this bill.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to testify in support? I don't see any. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support to Assembly Bill 223? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You each have 2 minutes. And then once you're done with your testimony, if you can get up so that the next person can testify. Thank you. Whoever is ready may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Alex Andriozzi. That's A-L-E-X-A-N-D-R-E-O-Z-Z-I. I'm a student attorney, a member of the Tenants' Rights Clinic run by the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. Through this clinic, I have seen firsthand the devastating impact of our current habitability laws, which fail to protect tenants from unlivable conditions. Recently, I met a woman who was evicted despite having overwhelming evidence of a roach infestation in her apartment. She showed me her proof, which was a habitability letter, photos, emails, and texts to her landlord, all of which were ignored in court. She couldn't afford to move at the time and was forced to endure the conditions until she withheld rent out of desperation, only to learn that now she had no legal recourse. The legal system failed her, offering no remedy, no recognition, and no justice. AB 223 is critical because it empowers tenants to advocate for themselves rather than leaving them entirely at the mercy of the landlords. The landlord-tenant relationship is fundamental to our economy. If we fail to protect tenants, we invite greater instability and strain on our state. I urge you to support AB 223 and ensure a fair and just housing system for all Nevadans.
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Rubenstein, Lorirubenstein, and I am a retired legal aid attorney. My job was working with landlord-tenant cases representing tenants for probably 20 years. I now live in Las Vegas. While individual cases could be won or lost in court, what concerned us as representatives of low-income tenants was that they had few options when it came to getting tenants to make repairs. In most cases, we are talking about habitability issues, such as heat, air conditioning, running water, rodent removal, and working toilets. Putting on my other hat as a property owner, I wanted to keep my property, my investment, in good repair. Most of us property owners do, and we couldn't even imagine allowing our property to fall into such disrepair. But this bill is directed at those landlords we generally refer to as slumlords, those who neglect their property and responsibility towards tenants. And I can tell you that legal aid actually represented a very small number of tenants, concentrating mostly on the bad actors. And while expanding some tenant rights, it does continue to put the impetus on the tenant to comply with a verified complaint within 15 days of the problem to be remedied. I ask you to vote in favor of AB 223. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Diana Diaz, D-I-A-N-A-D-I-A-Z. I am a leader with plan. I'm here to testify in support of AB 223. I had lived on the west side of Las Vegas. I lived in an apartment for 6 years. The property management name is Skyline Property Management. I lived there for 6 years, and when I moved in, the stove was not working. The electrical light switches were uncovered. I had to check on the apartment August 23rd, 2019. The apartment had not been fixed. The stove and electrical outlets were uncovered, having wiring exposed, and there was a hole in my shower area. The management at that time fixed the stove and covered the outlets. During the period I was there, the manager raised the rent twice. I wrote 2 letters on the issues that was ongoing in that apartment. The issues were uneven flooring, a hole in the shower, and the sink needed to be caulked around the sink. There was mold on the baseboard near the toilet and a pigeon that was in the vent of the hallway. There was a plug in the closet that looked like fire damage. The vents needed to be cleaned and were not clean. There was a drawer in the kitchen that would not slide in and out. I told them that I was taking them to court. They gave me a new stove. And when I moved out, I found mold in the closets. Thank you, Chair and Committee, for listening to me. I hope you pass AB 223 for tenants in Nevada.
Thank you for your testimony. I just want to remind everyone that when you are testifying, please do not call any individual by name or company name. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Haben Pyo, Heabinpyo for the record, and I am a second-year law student at the Boyd School of Law and a member of the Tenants' Rights Clinic. As a practicing student attorney, I have seen firsthand landlord, tenant, and eviction law. What we have come across is how our habitability laws do not adequately provide protection for our clients and at many times force our clients to live in uninhabitable conditions and force clients to pay rent even though the condition has not been addressed or not been resolved. Recently, we had a client who was living with toxic mold and a leaking sink, and their landlord did not remedy the situation or attempt to remedy the situation until we were in court, even though our client had given notice to the landlord many times before for months. They lived in constant anxiety of being unhoused and if they were to withhold rent, as the law currently requires, and eventually moved out because of persisting health problems that they were getting from the mold. The law should change to provide tenants adequate remedy that they deserve. I ask the committee to defer to my written testimony, and again, I want to express my support for this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ariana McConnell, ARIANA-MCCONNELL, and I am also a third-year student at the William S. Boyd School of Law and a student attorney with the Tenants' Rights Legal Residency in partnership with the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. The main purpose of my comment today is to draw your attention to the written testimony submitted in support of AB 223. But in short, it's been disheartening to see firsthand in eviction court how we treat those who are facing housing insecurity. NRS 118A creates an imbalanced system that strongly favors landlords and is plagued with illogical inequities, such as having tenants file an answer before the landlord's complaint. But beyond this statutory scheme, local rules and court customs further disadvantage tenants who are facing evictions. AB 223 confronts just one section of Nevada's eviction law, habitability, and it would provide a meaningful opportunity to just one step toward a more level playing field between landlords and tenants. AB 223 would benefit thousands of Nevadans who deserve the dignity of clean, functioning, and dependable housing. So I ask for your support. Thank you.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Chair and committee. My name is Antoinette White, ANTOINETTE, WHITE. I am 54 years old, disabled. I have been in Vegas since Hurricane Katrina 2005. I am a leader with plan. I am here to testify in support of the AB 223 to ensure everyone has access to live in a suitable environment. I live in SD 10 and AD 15. I live on the same property and was switched from one unit to another unit on the same property. I experienced in both units rodents, rats, mold. I have even bad piping issues, unsafe living conditions. I have, this is back here in 11/12/2024. I have contacted code enforcement, also notified mold since 10/19/2024. Landlord has not acknowledged any of my concerns, written concerns, nor the mold issue in the home as of 10/19/2024. I urge you to pass this bill, AB 223, so other people like me can live in healthy conditions.
Hello, my name is Shonda Nicole. It's SHAUNDANECOLE. And as a landlord, I find that the best tenant relationships are built on accountability and responsibility. Tenants are less likely to be negligent with the property when they can trust in reliable responses to maintenance and repairs and often take care in being non-negligent. Tenants have a responsibility to pay rent, and likewise, landlords have a responsibility to provide safe, habitable housing and maintenance in a timely manner. It would actually be less expensive for landlords to provide safe and equitable housing versus the acquisition of new tenants and repeat evictions, especially since this bill allows for landlords to have a reasonable time to respond and work with tenants, and therefore I am in support of this bill. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vicente Gallardo. I'm actually a realtor, part of the Association of Realtors here in Las Vegas. And I support AB 223. And the reason why, at least I get about 10 to 20 calls a day from tenants looking for a property to rent. And most of them, they complain about mold. And I just have to tell them, hey, you know what, just go and take pictures and try to present it to court. I'm going to give you an example of a past client that he just rented a property right now. So he got out of the place where he was living. His entire family had got positive on toxics of mold in their bodies by a medical. So I think this is a really important bill to pass because it is also affecting the trust that tenants has on property management, landlords, and realtors at the same time. And at the same time, we have to provide a very good place where they can live with dignity, and a safe place for their family. Because most of the people who rent, they work a lot of like multiple jobs. Most of the time, they're not even at home, and coming home just to feel like they're gonna get sick is not really nice. So I support this bill. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Paul Catha, that's spelled P-A-U-L-C-A-T-H-A, and I'm representing the Culinary Workers Union Local 226. Nevada has a serious problem with enforcement of habitability complaints against landlords. I've heard from a number of culinary members as well as other community members regarding landlords failing to make urgent and necessary repairs in a timely manner, including in life-threatening circumstances involving air conditioners in Las Vegas in the summer. In observing eviction proceedings in Las Vegas Justice Court, I also saw a number of tenants being evicted because they had withheld rent as a result of their units being unlivable. Unfortunately, because they did not know the process to withhold rent, they were removed from their unit and had an eviction placed on their record, even if they had evidence of the habitability issues. Eviction court cannot be the only venue for tenants to enforce their rights. The stakes are too high if a tenant makes a mistake. Nevada must ensure that there is an incentive structure in place to encourage landlords to maintain their units in a livable state, and that our process is transparent and effective in order for tenants to be able to enforce their right to a livable home. The Culinary Union urges the committee to support and pass AB 223. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Noah Cicero, Noah-Cicero. I am here with the group Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. I have flicked cockroaches out of my hair. I have turned on the lights and watched cockroaches scatter across my kitchen floor. I have cleaned and laid down cockroach traps. Regardless, the cockroaches emerge and skitter in my bathtub. I have seen cockroaches on my counter sinking a crumb of bread. I have stared into the eyes of cockroaches. I have sweated in the broken air conditioner night. I have breathed the dangerous spores of mold. I have felt trapped. I have felt meaningless. I have felt like I did not matter. I have felt like that I, too, have become a cockroach, a pest that doesn't matter to anyone. Cockroaches can be evicted just as quickly as I can in the state of Nevada. What the landlord wants, the landlord gets, while the renter is left in dismal conditions and feeling powerless. The rents have risen to $1,400. The renters are contributing heavily to the apartment community's mortgage. But instead of being treated as co-owners, renters are treated like the cockroaches that infest their apartments. AB 223 gives power to the renter, who isn't a renter, but a contributor to the mortgage and life of the apartment community. I believe SB 223 makes Nevada better. Thank you for your time and dedication to our state.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Muri Correa, soy recamarera en la Strip de Las Vegas y miembro de la Unión Culinaria durante 9 años. Apoyo el proyecto de la Ley 223 de la Asamblea. Alquilo la casa en la que estoy viviendo durante los últimos 5 años. El año pasado tuve un incidente con el aire acondicionado, dejó de funcionar durante una semana. Cuando esto sucedió, llamé inmediatamente a mi arrendador para informarle del problema. Dijo que se haría responsable y buscaría a alguien que lo arreglara. Envió a una persona que lo inspeccionó y dijo que lo había arreglado. Al día siguiente vi que el problema no se había arreglado y hablé con mi arrendador nuevamente y le dije que no se había arreglado. Encontraron a otra persona que reemplazaría el aire acondicionado. Les tomó más de una semana reemplazar la unidad del aire acondicionado. Fue una semana muy difícil porque era verano. Afuera hacía 110 grados, pero adentro se sentía más de 115 grados. No está bien que un arrendador no haya solucionado el problema de inmediato, especialmente durante una ola de calor en la que podemos sufrir problemas de salud debido al calor. Soy madre soltera y cuando los arrendadores no toman medidas para resolver estos problemas, esto afecta negativamente a las familias de clase trabajadora como la mía. La legislatura de Nevada debería aprobar el proyecto de la ley 223 de la Asamblea para proteger a los inquilinos como yo. Muchas gracias.
Hi, my name is Roman Alejo. I'm here to translate Moody's Correa's remarks. I am a guest room attendant on the Las Vegas Strip and Culinary Union member for 9 years. I am in support of AB 223. I rent the house that I have been living in for the past 5 years. Last year, I had an incident with the air conditioning. It stopped working for about a week. When this happened, I immediately called my landlord to inform him of the problem. He said he would take responsibility and look for someone to fix it. He sent a person who inspected it and said he fixed it. The next day, I saw that the issue was not fixed. And I talked to my landlord again and let him know it hasn't been fixed. They found someone else who would replace the air conditioning. It took more than a week for them to replace the AC unit. It was a very hard week because it was summer. It was 110 degrees outside, but being inside felt like 115 degrees or more. It's not right that the landlord did not fix the issue right away, especially during a heat wave where we can experience health issues due to the heat. I am a single mom, and when landlords don't take action to solve these issues, it negatively impacts working families like mine. The Nevada Legislature should pass AB 223 to protect renters like me. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Glenda Hairston, GlendaHairston. I'm a proud member of Make the Road Nevada, and I've been dealing with serious housing issues in my complex, which is a senior complex, where I was moved from one unit to another. During this process, I was charged hidden fees that were never disclosed up front. The management regularly adds unauthorized fees to my contract and withdraws money from my account without proper justification. I am not the only one in my complex that has experienced this. Many of the other tenants in my complex are facing the same unfair charges. Renters deserve transparency and protection from these practices. This bill is essential to holding landlords accountable and ensuring tenants are not taken advantage of. I urge you to support AB 233.
Hello, good afternoon for everyone. My name is Norma Torres. I'm a guest room attendant on Las Vegas Strip, and I'm a culinary member for 9 years. And I'm a supporter of the AB 223. I'm a renter, and my goal is to have my own house. But I had an issue with the water during summer 2023. My water bill, which usually is around $30, suddenly jumped all the way to $200 to $300 a month. When I called the water district, I told them my issue, and they told me maybe I could have a leak, and I did. There was a leak in the main line, causing the water to run constantly, so they had to shut down my water line. I called my landlord, and he's sent someone to talk. It took him 2 days to get there to see the issue. And after that, they took almost 2 to 3 weeks to fix the main line. I'm a single mom, and on that time I had to go over my parents' house to get ready, to take shower, to get ready my daughters to take them to school. As a renter, we struggle to learn to fix the issues quickly, even if we have kids at home. As a working parent, it's important to have to take care of our kids. I share my story to the people to understand what's happening. Sometimes has the things not done. Then the Nevada Legislature should pass the AB 223 and protect renters like me. Thank you. 。 。 。 。 。
Good 。 。 。 Good 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 Good afternoon. Phyllis Carpenter, PHYLLISCARPENTER. Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to letting me to speak today. I live in Senate District 3, Assembly District 10. I am a low-income housing participant managed by the Housing Authority. I was moved to Arthur D. Sartini in January of 2020 due to mold at my prior unit, only to find out that they moved me to an even worse mold infestation. To date, there have been 3 mold remediations. May of 2023, the fungal spore count came back in the thousands. HUD instructed Housing Authority to take the unit out of inventory for 1 year to make the necessary repairs. And I did get first option to move back after repairs. In that year, I was moved 7 times. Each time, the unit had serious habitability issues, causing the next move. In May of 2024, I was moved back, only to find out that the repairs were not done. There are federal regulations, policies, and procedures that are not being followed. And now I have a pulmonary nodule on my left lung, and there's no way to file a complaint against the Housing Authority employees there's no way to file a complaint that makes it any further than their office. So there's no accountability. I am in support of AB 233, and I am also a leader with plan. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Artasia Graham. For the record, that's ARTESIAGRAHAM, and I am here with Make It Work Nevada to advocate for fair housing in Nevada in support of AB 223. I currently rent a condo where my landlord does not make repairs in a timely manner because they do not live in the state of Nevada. When maintenance issues arise, whether it's plumbing, electrical problems, or other hazards, I have waited several months for them to be repaired. Currently, my master bathroom is leaking water, causing mold to grow. My guest bathroom tub is also broken. Currently, I also have been waiting an entire month for my kitchen oven to be replaced, which I cannot use. Despite paying rent on time, I am forced to live with conditions that have not been resolved quickly. I know that I am not alone in this experience. I support AB 223.
Hello, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. My name is Brenda Zamora. That's BRENDA ZAMORA. I'm the Deputy Director with Make It Work Nevada. We are a reproductive justice organization and part of the Nevada Housing Justice Alliance. Ensuring habitability is not only a matter of housing justice, but also a fundamental aspect of reproductive justice, affirming every family's right to a safe, stable, and dignified living environment. We urge you all to support AB 223. Thank you for your time.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Alejandro Ramos y soy un orgulloso miembro de Make It Work Nevada. Aunque hoy tengo mi propia casa, no olvido lo difícil que fue rentar. Pagamos nuestra renta puntualmente, pero cuando surgían problemas como el aire acondicionado, la calefacción o el fregadero descompuesto, los arrendadores no tenían tiempo, simplemente decían que atenderían el problema cuando pudieran. Imagínese pasar el verano sin aire acondicionado dentro de un apartamento. Es terrible vivir en esas condiciones. Los inquilinos merecemos más derechos y protecciones para asegurarnos de que los propietarios cumplan con su responsabilidad. No es justo que aún pagando renta y seguros no tengamos soluciones rápidas cuando enfrentamos emergencias en nuestro hogar. Este proyecto de ley es necesario para que nadie más tenga que vivir en condiciones inhumanas mientras espera ayuda. Y estoy a favor de que pasen esta propuesta de ley AB 223. Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon, Chair Mazzola and members of the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. My name is Ashley Dodson. That's ASHLEY DODSON of Anchor Perspectives. I am here on behalf of the NAACP Las Vegas Chapter 1111 and Plan Nevada in support of Assembly Bill 223. a critical step toward ensuring fair, habitable, and dignified housing conditions for tenants across Nevada. Housing is not just about shelter, it is a fundamental necessity for stability, health, and overall well-being. Yet far too often, tenants endure unsafe and unhealthy living conditions due to negligent landlords who fail to address basic maintenance issues. The NAACP Las Vegas stands firmly on the principles of equity, justice, and civil rights, advocating for policies that protect historically marginalized communities from systemic discrimination. Housing insecurity disproportionately impacts Black and low-income families, often forcing them into conditions that threaten their health, safety, and financial stability. This bill aligns with our mission to ensure economic justice and fairness in housing, reinforcing the belief that all Nevadans deserve a safe and habitable place to call home. As a previous renter in Nevada, I personally experienced the struggles this bill seeks to address. I was forced to handle ongoing pest control and air conditioning maintenance issues that were a direct result of my landlord's neglect as they lived out of state. Despite repeated requests, my landlord refused to take action, leaving me with no choice but to shoulder the financial and emotional burden of making their repairs myself and health issues it caused for my asthmatic children and frequent hospital visits. This kind of negligence is unacceptable, and AB 223 will empower tenants with the necessary legal avenues to hold landlords accountable and secure immediate relief and unaddressed habitability violations. We urge the committee to pass this vital legislation to ensure all Nevadans have access to safe and livable housing. Thank you to the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada and Assemblymember Considine for tackling this issue and standing up for our tenants' rights. The NAACP Las Vegas supports AB 223 and calls for its swift passage. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Val Thomason. I'm an organizer with the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. Many years ago now, I moved into an apartment in North Las Vegas. And on the very first night that I moved in, I discovered that it was completely infested with cockroaches. The roaches were so bad that many nights I would sleep in a plastic chair in the living room so that none of them could crawl on me while I was sleeping. And when I first heard of this bill, this was many years ago now, the very first thing I wanted to do was go back to those apartments, which were infested, with roaches, rats, spiders, and with water damage that was drawing these pests to the apartment. So I went back to these units and I knocked on their doors and I asked them if these problems were still there. I spoke to over 40 people in those same apartments, some of them in the exact same unit, the same building that I had moved out of, who said they still had water in the walls, they still had mold growing in the walls, and they still had roaches and pests every day. 6 years in between when I moved out and now. And nobody had done anything to enforce the standards of living in those apartments. 6 years, and they still had the same problem. So we are supportive, and I'm supportive of AB 223, because we believe that nobody is doing enough to ensure that they're fixing these problems and not just moving one tenant out and putting another person in that same position. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Danny Garcia. That's DANIGARCIA. I live in Senate District 9 and Assembly District 42, and I'm here with the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. I'm a longtime Nevada resident and a renter, and I'm here to express my support of AB 223. In 2021, a pipe in my mom's bathroom burst, flooding our entire apartment. And while the pipe issue was fixed rather quickly, our property management did nothing to address the other issues in our apartment, such as the linoleum literally bubbling up and mold growing throughout the carpets and the walls. We lodged many complaints, went through the proper channels, and still nothing was done for months. During this time, my family's health began to decline, and we stopped having people over because of the embarrassment of the way our apartment looked, but also the fear that we might get somebody else sick. I eventually moved out, which is when I assumed the issue was finally addressed, but I'm not sure how badly my family's health was impacted by the mold. I'm not sure why the property management did nothing despite us constantly complaining and constantly trying to get them to address this issue. What I do know is legislation like this would have provided me with options and more ways to hold my complex accountable, and if nothing else, be able to break my lease and find somewhere else to live. I know my experience is not unique, and that is why I urge you to pass AB 223. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Van Collins, MICHEVANCOLLINS. I'm a proud member of Make the Road Nevada. Just to give you a little information about myself and my experience of neglect per se. I've lived in my apartment for over 5 years. Unfortunately, during my tenancy there, I have noticed several issues that vary from floods, roach infestation, and several instances and areas where mold has repeatedly had shown in the apartment. During my time while the repairs were supposed to be done, they were never done completely, only to be fixed with cover-ups per se. Sanding of the mold, only for it to grow back. I suffered through 4 floods within this unit. I also tried to remedy this by having open communication with the landlords and its corporate office, which is located here in Nevada. Unfortunately, they have been master deflectors. Instead of fixing the problem, again, they've patched up the problem. The Band-Aids could not be repaired. It just created a larger issue. So when I noticed the mold, I tried to have another conversation with my landlord and made a repair request. Unfortunately, it took forever for them to respond, to the point to where I came home one evening and the water was flowing out of the unit. When they finally did, they told me I had to vacate the apartment and find another place. And I was under the impression that I did have to find another place, but instead I was served with an eviction notice. I am now homeless for over several months now regarding this issue. I'm a proud supporter of AB 223, hopefully so tenants can have the proper rights and there can be an open line of communication with lawyers, with landlords and tenants as well. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Isabel Pastrana. Soy una orgullosa de miembro de MEC de Rock, Nevada. Hoy quiero compartir una experiencia difícil que vivimos mientras rentaba un apartamento. En un verano, el aire acondicionado dejó de funcionar. A pesar del calor extremo, alrededor no respondieron. El arrendador no respondió inmediatamente. Fue una situación desesperante, especialmente para mis niños porque estaban muy pequeños. Lloraban por el calor insoportable. No sabía a quién más acudir para obtener ayuda. Pasamos 2 días en esas condiciones y aún fueron solo 48 horas. Se sintió eterno. Al final, tuvimos que comprar un aire acondicionado portátil con nuestro propio dinero, solo para poder sobrellevar esos días. Exigimos respuestas y soluciones para quienes rentamos. Afortunadamente, después de mucho esfuerzo, hoy tengo mi propia casa y ya no paso por esas situaciones. Sin embargo, sé que hay muchas familias que siguen enfrentando estos problemas, que necesitan apoyo y este proyecto de ley es fundamental para garantizar a los inquilinos que vivan en condiciones dignas y que los propietarios sean responsables de mantener sus propias habitables. Eso es lo justo para todos nosotros y estoy a favor de que pasen esta propuesta de ley AB 223. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rihanna Meadows. I'm the Housing Justice Organizer with Make the Road, pronouns she, her. I will be translating for Isabel Pastrana. Good afternoon. My name is Isabel Pastrana, and I'm a proud member of Make the Road, Nevada. Today, I want to share a difficult experience I had while renting an apartment. One summer, the air conditioner stopped working, and despite the extreme heat, the landlord did not respond immediately. It was a desperate situation, especially since my children were very young and crying from the unbearable heat. We did not know who else to turn to for help. We spent days in those conditions, even though it was only 48 hours, it felt like forever. In the end, we had to buy a portable air conditioner with our own money just to get through those days. We demanded answers and solutions for those of us who rented. Fortunately, after much effort, today I have my own home, no longer go through these situations. However, I know that there are many families who continue to face these problems and need support. This bill is essential to ensure that tenants live in decent conditions and that landlords are responsible for keeping their properties habitable. It is only fair to all of us. And I support AB 223. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Clark, ROCHELLE-CLARK. I'm here today to discuss the problems I'm having at my apartment. I live in a senior citizen apartment, and I've had issues with pigeons, neighbors feeding pigeons, harboring 7 to 10 cats. The cats are eating the heads off the pigeons and eating the stomach, and they're bringing it to my patio. Also, I have problems with the cats on my patio, urinating, jumping up and down from the daylight to the evening. I've contacted the office about it. They haven't done anything about it. And I also want to say that I have the same neighbor that is harboring these pigeons, feeding these pigeons and cats, has threatened me. I did get a restraining order for 6 months. He's calmed down some. And the neighbor has so much trash outside his apartment door. I also want to say that I've had problem with mold, 2 of the toilets. I swabbed it with a Petri dish. It took them a while for them to replace the toilets. One of my toilets now, the mold is coming back through the water. And under my kitchen sink, they keep telling me that it's not leaking, but it's getting lower and lower. I keep it taped up because of the mold, and the maintenance was spray covered with paint, so it's not showing. But I take pictures all the time. I've been to ER several times, being bitten. They don't know if it's mosquitoes or spiders. But before we had the issues with the mosquitoes, I was being bitten by spiders. Also, several times I be coughing at night due to neighbors smoking cigarettes in their apartment. I've told them about it. I even asked the office to come and smell the smoke in my apartment.
Ma'am, I hate to interrupt you. Can you wrap up your statement, please? You can always submit it in writing as well. Thank you.
I'm actually done. I just wanted to say that. Thank you. Oh, I support AB 233.
Thank you. Can you turn off your mic if possible?
Hi, my name is Valerie Young, VALARIEYOUNG. I do support AB 223. I'd like to start out by saying I'm a responsible tenant paying my rent on time for 4 years since I've been at this location, Lake Tonopah. At the end of the day, we went to the leasing office to pay our rent, but the new leasing agent charged me twice for my rent. And the manager, she was not familiar with the process. So I returned the next day to get my receipt. Again, returned, hoping to make a payment. Unfortunately, the new manager accidentally charged me 2 months' rent, draining my entire bank account. This mistake set off a chain of events, leaving me unable to pay storage bills, light, gas, and a variety of other necessity bills that I have. A year later, I'm still waiting for this reimbursement from Lake Tonopah. My life had been turned upside down. Through all this hardship, I have to stay resilient by the weight of the situation, still lingering on. Hopefully, one day I'll be able to get the monies and the monies that I can recover from this difficult situation. I'm lost to funds. Thank you.
I don't see anyone else coming up in support in Las Vegas. Broadcast, is there anyone on the phone wishing to testify in support to Assembly Bill 223?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 223, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you wish to testify in support of Assembly Bill 223, please press star 9.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dora Martinez, and I represent the Nevada Disability Action Coalition. And as people with disability, we really encourage you all to please vote yes on this common sense bill. Thank you, and happy International Nap Day for those who celebrate. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon. My name is Emmy Miranda, spelled Emymiranda for the record. I'm the Housing Justice Organizer with Make the Road Nevada, here to support Bill AB 223. This bill is crucial for protecting tenants and holding landlords accountable for maintaining habitable living conditions. I've personally experienced the impact of landlords neglecting living conditions. I lived in an apartment for 3 years with severe mold issues that affected my respiratory health. Despite repeatedly raising concerns, my landlord ignored them. I struggled with breathing issues from ages 12 to 15, and eventually, after rent increases, we were forced to move. AB 223 addresses these issues by requiring landlords to maintain safe, habitable living conditions and allowing tenants to file complaints for quicker relief. This bill would have been invaluable to me and my family. Landlords must face consequences for neglect, and tenants should be empowered to report violations without fear of retaliation. AB 223 ensures tenants are treated with respect and dignity by allowing them to break leases if their living space is uninhabitable, which is why I ask you today to please support Bill AB 223. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Hi, my name is Sarah Levitt, SarahLeavitt, and I live in Henderson, Nevada. And I'm in support of AB 223 because I have been a tenant before and I've seen these habitability issues. I've also been a tenant organizer, helping people try to stand up for their own rights as tenants. And there's a lot of these habitability issues. The system we have right now doesn't deal with it. Power is out of balance big time right now. We need a system that allows tenants to hold their landlords accountable when they're not doing the basic things that they're contracted to do, which is provide livable housing in exchange for the rent. So I just think it's really important to pass this bill to really balance the power between landlords and tenants and make sure that people have habitable living spaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Shelby Swartz, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. I'm also what some would call a mom and pop landlord in Las Vegas. My family and I outgrew our first home, and with the market being what it is, we chose to rent it out to a family who deserves the same dignity, security, and stability that we once had when we lived there. Because here's the truth. When someone pays rent, they aren't just paying for 4 walls and a roof. They're paying for a home, a place where they should feel safe, where their children should be able to sleep at night without fear of the ceiling caving in or their air conditioning cutting off in the dead of summer. That is why I maintain a home warranty for just $50 a month. That's less than a single dinner out, less than what most landlords pocket in profit each month. And yet it ensures that when something goes wrong, whether it's a heating failure in the winter, a leaking water heater, or faulty wiring that could start a fire, it gets fixed immediately. Because that's what decent, responsible landlords do. Today, you will likely hear from other mom and pop landlords opposing this bill, as its basic habitability is an extreme demand. They may claim that they can't afford to maintain their properties while raking in hundreds or thousands per year in rent over and above their mortgages. They may bemoan so-called burdensome regulations when in reality, they just do not want to be held accountable for neglecting their tenants or profiting off of their suffering. Assembly Bill 233 is long overdue. This isn't radical, it's common sense. If you own a rental property, you have a legal and moral responsibility to ensure that it is safe and habitable. If you claim you can't afford to maintain your property, then you shouldn't be renting it out in the first place. Let someone else who cares about human dignity take that place. As a mom and pop landlord who respects my tenants and I see them as human beings, not just a paycheck, I strongly support AB 223. I urge you to support this bill and send a clear message that if you can't take care of your property, you should not be in the business of housing people. It's time to stop protecting slumlords and stand up for Nevada's renters. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. For the record, Matilda Miller, that's MATHILDA-MILLER, Government Relations Director of Native Voters Alliance Nevada, and we are also proud members of the Nevada Housing Justice Alliance, and we're in strong and unwavering support of Assembly Bill 223. In 2024, I watched 262 families lose their homes. Many of them had spent weeks, even months, begging their landlords to fix unlivable conditions, mold creeping up on the walls, plumbing that barely worked, and no air conditioning in extreme heat. And instead of getting help, they were ignored, waiting and suffering, and then finally they were pushed out. These aren't just individuals, these are families, even with young children. Babies sleeping in overheated homes, kids coughing throughout the night from black mold, parents working multiple jobs to save rent on homes that they were making them sick. And what happens when tenants demand basic fixes? Sometimes landlords retaliate, they ignore them, they hike up fees, or force them out altogether. Nevadans work hard to keep a roof over their heads. They shouldn't have to fight to make sure that that roof isn't caving in, that their water runs clean, or that their air conditioning works when it's 110 degrees outside. This bill is about fairness, it's about dignity, and it's about making sure that when someone pays rent, they get a home that won't put their life at risk. We urge this body to support this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Anwar Green, ANWARGREEN. I am calling in support of AB 223. Like so many others you've heard so far this afternoon, I too was a tenant who moved into a place only to find that it was overrun with roaches. The lighting was no good. I don't know if you've ever opened your refrigerator and found roaches in there chilling, but it is a traumatizing experience, to say the least. I remember speaking to the landlord and being told, oh, we've got the best baits in the business, we'll drop some off for you, and that never happened. And then when I was told to try to stay on top of it myself, and when I reached out to an exterminator on my own, I found out that there were tons of other people in the same community that had the same exterminator because we all had an infestation. Mind you, in the laundry room, there was a big sign saying, if you have bugs, call us before it gets too late. It was too late when I moved in there. And I don't think anyone should ever have to live in a situation like that, especially when you're paying rent all the time. Why are you paying rent to live in a place that is just like living outside? So that's why I support this bill, and I urge you to pass this out of committee and get it to the governor's desk as soon as possible. Let's protect other Nevada tenants. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Yesenia Moya, YESENIAMOYA. I'm a local organizer, educator, and artist. I have been renting my entire life. I have seen firsthand the degradation that people suffer when they go to eviction court. You'll, just like today's testimony here, you'll see case after case after case of families that are being evicted because they didn't have a legal defense, and most of them had habitability issues and didn't know that there were any other options. And so I'm in strong support
of AB 223 because it brings dignity to the forefront of all of our communities. As someone who's had to sleep on floors with roaches and bed bugs and had to live in places that had water damage and had to learn how to fix my own AC because the landlord was unresponsive or living at the behest of the grace or lack thereof of a landlord that didn't want to help. I think it's important that we recognize this is a common sense bill meant to go after landlords that are unwilling to do what they're supposed to do and provide a healthy living environment for their tenants. If you're somebody that keeps up with these laws, you shouldn't be afraid of this and you should be supporting us. And if you can't keep up with your properties, then maybe you should think about not renting out to people. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katrina Grigsby Thefford, CatrinaGrigsbyTheFord. I'm the Executive Director of Nevada Homeless Alliance here in Las Vegas. I fully support AB 223 because it addresses the critical need for stronger protections and clearer rights for tenants in Nevada. It acknowledges that tenants who have limited options in a rental market deserve housing that meets their basic standards. And it also ensures landlords are held accountable for maintaining habitable conditions. It kind of sounds like that many of the questions previously asked were focused on making life easier for landlords, not tenants. Like Jonathan, I'm more sympathetic to the tenant who has to live in such conditions. In the end, landlords should be held accountable to ensure their properties are habitable. They need to do whatever is needed to ensure the safety of tenants, regardless of who is to blame. That person pays rent. If the landlord needs to pay for individuals to stay in a hotel for 3 days while they spray a full section of a unit, they need to do that. I just wanted to put it out there. It is important to clarify that while nothing in the current law prohibits landlords to work with tenants, AB 223 makes crucial steps to protect tenants by ensuring they have recourse when a landlord fails to uphold basic housing standards. Landlords often do not work with the tenants, and there are bad actors out there. The new law acknowledges that tenants have rights to safe and habitable housing and provides necessary framework for tenants to seek quicker relief if their landlord neglects their responsibilities. Ultimately, I support AB 223 because it recognizes that tenants have a right to safe, healthy, and well-maintained housing. It's a step toward ensuring that the rental market operates fairly with respect for the well-being of all tenants, acknowledging that landlords must be held to a standard of care that aligns with the fundamental rights of their tenants. Ask yourself, would they live in such
Ma'am, can you please wrap
conditions?
up your
I think not.
statement? Thank you. Broadcast. Are you there? Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Chair, there are no more callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 223. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, for the record, John Sandy, Johnsande, here today on behalf of the Nevada State Apartment Association. Nevada already has a fair system for tenants to challenge the habitability issues, providing clear remedies such as withholding rent, terminating leases, and seeking legal action. While courts may sometimes make bad decisions, that doesn't mean the law itself is bad or is in need of drastic change. AB 223 doesn't fix an inherent problem in the law, it creates a new one. By allowing tenants to raise habitability claims in any summary eviction proceeding without penalty for false claims, this bill invites abuse. A tenant being evicted for violations like property damage, illegal activity, or lease breaches could simply claim habitability issues to delay evictions, forcing landlords into costly, time-consuming legal battles, even if the claims are unfounded. Existing law already allows tenants to immediately leave an uninhabitable unit. AB 223 instead lets them stay up for 60 days, exposing landlords to liability and contradicting the intent of habitability protections. If a unit is truly unlivable, why should or would a tenant want to stay? Finally, the bill removes judicial discretion in evaluating good faith efforts by landlords. Some repairs require parts, contractors, or time to resolve, or take time to resolve. Punishing responsible landlords who are actively making repairs that just takes time is bad policy. AB 223 does not improve habitability protections. It weaponizes them to obstruct lawful evictions. And in closing, I want to say you guys have a difficult responsibility in balancing the interests between landlords and tenants. It's definitely not easy, especially when you consider, as in many cases, a bad landlord and an innocent tenant. However, what I would ask for all of you to do is reread this bill, but this time assume that you have a very well-intended landlord and maybe not as well of an intended tenant, and see if those balance, if the scales still balance at the end of that. Thank you all for your time, and I appreciate it.
Hello, Chair Marzola and committee members. My name is Sam Anastasados. That's spelled Anastasatos, and I'm here on behalf of the Nevada Multifamily Alliance. We are in opposition to AB 223, and we have submitted a letter to Nellis. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see any. I see people are already seated in Las Vegas. You may begin when you're ready. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and committee. I'm Azim Jessa, Azimjessa, and I'm the chair of the Nevada Realtors Legislative Committee. I'm here today in opposition of AB 223. I'm going to walk through some of our opposition to the specifics in the bill, and with me is Melissa Saragosa Stratton, and she'll cover the rest of our concerns on this bill. I'd like to first emphasize, though, that the realtors are not against ensuring tenants have habitable housing, but that there's already laws that exist, and with some small tweaks, they could be made to achieve some of the issues that some of the folks have had here today. We believe that this bill would only make housing more expensive, and that is something that nobody in this building or your building up there should want right now. First of all, sections 2 and 3 of the bill create definitions that are confusing. The term actual damages has already been defined by the Nevada Supreme Court to be synonymous with compensatory damages. That includes all damages to make the aggrieved party whole. This definition is unnecessary and adds more confusion than clarity. The definition of diminution, I know that word's been tricky for everyone today, a value of a dwelling unit similarly adds confusion. The value of a dwelling unit is fair market rental or sale value. We think what is intended is the diminution of fair rental value of the dwelling unit, which is terminology already used in Chapter 118A. The Nevada Realtors fundamentally disagree that the lack of a written agreement should raise the rebuttable presumption that a landlord will provide all utilities to a tenant free of charge, as this bill provides in Section 6.6. Furthermore, utility is undefined in this bill's language. In Section 13, we object to taking away the court's discretion and ability to determine whether punitive damages are warranted based on the circumstances of the case, the course of conduct between parties, and the degree of actual harm caused to the tenant. Existing law aims to punish bad actors whose conduct is willful. This bill aims to mandate punitive damages in the amount of 3 times rent for what could amount to be an accident, miscommunication, or an incident that lasted a short period longer than the allocated days in the bill. It removes from consideration whether there is any actual harm or damage to the tenant, replacing it with strict liability and mandated punitive damages. Thank you for your time today. The Nevada Realtors strongly urge you to oppose this bill.
May I proceed?
Yes, please. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and committee. My name is Melissa Saragosa Stratton. That's SARAGOSA-STRATTON. And I'm here today as counsel for the Nevada Realtors. Existing law authorizes a tenant to withhold rent from the landlord when a habitability claim is properly raised, and already serves as a defense to an eviction for non-payment of rent of that withheld rent. We oppose Section 4 of this bill, which would allow the filing of a verified complaint regarding habitability to serve as a defense to all summary evictions, not just for non-payment of rent. This includes evictions for holdover tenants, violation of lease conditions, conducting unlawful business, assigning and subletting, committing waste, nuisance, and violations of the Uniform Controlled Substances Act. Habitability is unrelated to those evictions. We also oppose Sections 10, 11, and 12 of the bill. First, existing law gives the tenant the right to immediately terminate the lease with no penalty when the landlord fails to make the dwelling uninhabitable. This is the statutory concept of constructive eviction. This bill would change the tenant's remedy from immediate termination to termination up to 60 days in the future and have the tenant remain living in the dwelling deemed unfit for habitation for up to those 60 days. This would expose a landlord to further liability based upon the tenant's choice to stay in an uninhabitable dwelling, potentially violate health codes, and is simply bad public policy. We oppose increasing the burden of proof to clear and convincing evidence for conditions caused by the tenant's deliberate or negligent acts or omissions, causing the uninhabitable condition. Finally, we oppose the bill's removal of judicial consideration of a landlord's good faith attempts or best efforts to remedy a habitability issue. Existing law grants a tenant relief from a bad acting or non-responsive landlord. The Nevada Realtors oppose the bill's efforts to punish a responsive landlord who is doing everything within their control to remedy a habitability issue, but is unable to fully remediate within 14 days for reasons outside of the landlord's control. For example, there are often situations when parts need to be ordered and the final remedy can't happen. We oppose this bill and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see anyone broadcast. Is there anyone on the line?
Testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 223. Please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you wish to testify in opposition, please press star 9.
Hello, my name is Ron Ariel, and I am a landlord and also a pediatrician, and I'm calling in opposition to 223. Even the proponents of 223 don't seem to understand how this bill would actually work, and when they were asked questions by members of the legislature, their answers were rather confused. They don't offer any data in support of 223, and they don't and they don't show, other than offering some horror stories, they don't really show how 223 would actually answer a problem about habitability. Instead, they choose to micromanage landlords, they choose to micromanage property managers by specifying exactly what all of us what we're supposed to do. They also have no idea about repair costs, the time expected for repair costs, and how complicated it is actually to take care of a property. I think that it would be much more productive to support a bill like 211, AB 211, and take this bill and I'm going to urge that it be vetoed because this is too much of a confused mishmash to solve any issues. Now, there's another alternative to this bill, which is to get rid of all private property managers, leasing agents, and have landlords contract with a state leasing office that would be established so that the state government would then decide for each landlord how to manage a building and would instruct each landlord how to manage a building. But this mess of a bill doesn't solve any problems. It just creates bureaucracy, and it'll lead to rent increases and confusion and punish landlords who don't deserve to be punished. So rather than move forward with a poorly conceived bill with no data behind it, why don't we support something sensible like 211 and then go back and do some more homework, and maybe the 2027 legislature can offer something a little more sensible. And my last name is Ariel, for the record, Ron Ariel, and I live in Reno. Thank you very much.
Chair, there are no more callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral? Please begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Mindy Elliott with Flynn Judici Government Affairs. That's MENDYELLIOTT. Today with me is Bill Brewer. He is the CEO for Nevada Rural Housing, and we wanted to provide in our discussions with legal services an opportunity for an actual landlord and some what the housing authorities go through, just to provide some context for all of you. So we're neutral in the bill, but we are here as expert witnesses. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Bill Brewer, B-R-E-W-E-R, the Executive Director at Nevada Rural Housing. Just to inform the committee, our clients who are recipients of a housing choice voucher must rent their own property. They must find their own property. The property must be decent, safe, and sanitary, meaning it needs to meet basic standards for habitability, including working plumbing, heating, cooling systems, electrical, wiring, smoke detectors, all those kinds of things. And the landlords must also ensure that the unit is free from significant health and safety hazards. Those units are inspected by the housing authority before the tenant moves in, and they are re-inspected at least annually thereafter. If an inspection uncovers a problem with the unit, the landlord is notified and asked to repair it. If they don't repair it within a reasonable amount of time, and that varies depending on the problem with the unit. In other words, if there's no electricity, that's a bigger problem than a hole in the wall, for example. The landlord has to get that fixed. If they don't, we can withhold the tenant assistance or the rent assistance to that landlord. That's our only ability to force that repair. We don't have any legal authority over the landlord. We've certainly heard about some bad actors today, and those are really problematic. We certainly understand that issue. We also wanted to point out that there may be some redundancy in this bill and with the existing law. There are a lot of good laws already on the books, and it would seem that the real challenge is not more law, but more support for the tenants who really need that. If they had access to legal services who could assist them through the process, the existing law would fully support whatever they need to do to get their unit back into shape. Thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions.
And if I could just close, for the new members, the housing authorities are the largest landlord in the state, for the record, Mindy Elliott. And so I just wanted to, anytime you need any assistance, Madam Chair, we're here to assist with any questions that you may have.
Thank you. No questions. I appreciate you being here. Is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 223? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 223. Press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you wish to testify in neutral, please press star 9. Chair, we have no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Assembly member, would you like to give any final remarks?
Thank you. I want to thank the committee. This has been a long hearing. I really appreciate your time and listening to everyone. I just want to close with the current situation that we have. When you sign a lease, you have two parties signing a lease where there are promises and requirements on both sides of the lease. For a landlord, if there is a lack of payment, they can evict. When there are problems, they can use nuisance and evict, and they have other tools in their toolbox in the lease that they can do. We have, I think, shown that in the habitability issue, there is nothing that the tenant can do that doesn't put them in jeopardy of eviction. So if they know enough to withhold the rent, send a notice of 14 days, know to give it to the court. If they don't follow every single one of those steps, an eviction is going to be imminent. When you have working class people or non-low income people who are in a situation where their landlord is not completing or fixing habitability issues, they more than low income folks tend to not do anything because they don't want to put themselves in a situation where they could be evicted and have an eviction on their record, and now they are stuck trying to find a new place to live. It was stated early, why should someone stay in a bad rental? Because there's not a lot of options right now. The largest landlord in the state has an ability to withhold the rent to make the landlord fix a place, and if not, they have the ability to not rent that place anymore. So I just wanted to bring that up. A verified complaint would give tenants the ability, if they've gone through the habitability issue, the 2 weeks time frame, still the lack of anything being fixed that is promised in a lease to be there that they are paying for, that they have a way to access the court without putting themselves in jeopardy of eviction. And I think bottom line, that is the nugget of this bill, and that's what I would like to see passed. And for somebody who asked, there were 85,078 statewide evictions in justice courts in Nevada last year. It is unknown how many of them were due to habitability, because if a tenant doesn't follow every single requirement, they are evicted and there is no notice of that information for the court to follow. I appreciate your time. I'm happy to speak with stakeholders and work on this bill, because I do think it's important to make this a fair, level playing field. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 223. 1 minute recess.
The committee will now come back to order. I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 305. Chair Marzola, when you're ready, please begin.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Howdigi and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Elaine Marzola, and I represent Assembly District 21 in Clark County. With me today here in Carson City, I have Jessica Ferrado with the Ferrado Company. And in Las Vegas, I have Yuvia Grant. She is a union rep with UFCW Local 711. She will be appearing in Las Vegas. There she is. I'm here to present Assembly Bill 305, which limits the fees providers can charge to process family and medical leave and leave of absence forms. I have submitted a conceptual amendment that revises the bill to match the first reprint from the 2023 legislative session. You each should have one on your desk. A little bit of background information for those who were not here in the committee last session, and also about FMLA. In 1993, FMLA passed, which made it into a federal law that entitles eligible employees of covered employers to take unpaid job-protected leave for specified family and medical reasons. An employer may request information to support certain FMLA qualifying reasons for leave. An employee can provide the required information contained on a certification form from a healthcare provider. The FMLA does not cap the fee of a doctor may charge an employee to complete the form. It is important to note that the fee to complete a certification form is in addition to the cost of an office visit with your healthcare provider. The burden of paying this fee falls on the employee, since FMLA, again, does not require employers or insurance companies to cover this cost. Across the Las Vegas Valley, provider offices charge upwards of $100 to process FMLA or leave of absence certification. Across the country, employees have fees ranging from $25 to $30. The unregulated cost creates a financial burden for working families in Nevada who are already taking leave from work to address medical needs for themselves or loved ones. Many of you recall that I sponsored Assembly Bill 437 last session. This committee passed a measure out unanimously. The legislature passed AB 437, which among the provisions prohibited a healthcare provider from charging more than $25 to complete a certification form required by an employer pursuant to FMLA. The governor vetoed this measure, citing in his message that virtually all these consultations are performed on a one-time basis and require additional staff processing time, the cost of which is better determined by individual providers rather than the legislature. The governor and I are going to have to agree to disagree. This afternoon, you will hear cases that are not as he stated. And just to give you an example in particular, after this bill became public, I had a constituent contact me that her treating physician, so not a one-time doctor, but her treating physician wanted to charge her $120 to fill out one of these forms. He wanted cash on top of that. And so that creates a huge burden. And on top of that, she's a single mom of 3 kids. This amount deters employees from taking necessary medical leave due to financial constraints. By setting reasonable standards for completing this form, we protect the rights of employees to access the benefits they are entitled to under FMLA. The amendment to Assembly Bill 305, which has been uploaded in Nellis, is identical to the one that was enrolled last session. Yeah. Madam Vice Chair, if I can now walk through the bill. I know this is quite a lengthy bill, so just hang on with me. Section 1, subsection 1 prohibits a provider from charging any fee to fill out an FMLA form required for an employer if the patient has seen the provider in the last 3 years. Subsection 2 allows a provider to charge up to $25 to fill out the form required for an employer if the provider hasn't seen the patient in the past 3 years. I would now like to, with your permission, Vice Chair, allow Uvia Grant in Las Vegas to provide additional information.
Ms. Grant, if you would, please just state and spell your name for the record, and then you can begin your remarks.
Thank you. My name is Uvia Grant, spelled L-L-U-V-I-A-G-R-A-N-T. Thank you, chair members of the Assembly Commerce and Labor Committee. I am the union rep with UFCW Local 711. I'm here to testify in support of AB 305, which would place a $25 cap on FMLA certification fees. UFCW Local 711 represents over 7,000 workers throughout Nevada. Our members work in grocery stores, retail pharmacy, and cannabis cultivation facilities and dispensaries. UFCW Local 711 members were designated as essential workers during the pandemic and kept our communities fed throughout our state. This issue is important to all working families in the state of Nevada because at some point, everyone is going to need to take time away from work to care for themselves or a family member. The Family and Medical Leave Act is the nation's first and only federal law designed to help people meet the dual demands of work and family. The FMLA guarantees eligible employees up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave each year to care for a newborn, a newly adopted child, or a seriously ill family member, or to recover from their own serious health conditions, including pregnancy. America's workers have used the FMLA more than 315 million times to take time off when they need it most, without having to worry about losing their jobs or their health insurance. An overwhelmingly majority of work sites, 92%, report no difficulty complying with FMLA. Labor and community leaders have all seen the signs and heard the stories of the continuing rise in the cost of FMLA certification fees in our state. We have heard from members that some of these costs are upwards of $100. Working families should not have to continue to cover this cost while taking unpaid time off for family or medical leave. After all, they already paid to see their healthcare provider and should not have to pay again for a form. The worker will be stepping out of workforce under FMLA, and forcing them to bear this with additional cost is wrong. Nevada legislators must act and provide consistency and lessen the financial burden for working families. I urge you to do that by supporting AB 305 today. Thank you for your attention to this issue and for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Elaine Marzola for the record. Vice Chair will stand for questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Oh. Member Cole?
Do you have an idea of how long approximately it takes a physician or a PA to fill out such a form? I have no idea how complicated this is.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Vice Chair, to the member. Jessica Ferrato for the record. That's
Ferrato, you can go direct.
Okay, thank you. Jessica Ferrato, here on behalf of the UFCW. I don't have those statistics in front of me in terms of how long it takes. What I can tell you is that most forms are roughly 2 pages long. We did upload some examples for you guys. Particularly with an established patient, the doctors are aware of the history of the patient, so it should be relatively quick. The other thing we'd like to bring up is that all doctors' offices have staff that are filling out insurance forms and other administrative forms, so we think that's aligned with a lot of those other forms that need to be completed. So a lot of this prep work can be done by staff that's already doing similar work in the office. Thank you.
Member O'Neill?
Thank you, Chair. I broke my last mic. You brought it up, Ms. Ferrato. They already fill out the insurance forms. Do they charge the insurance companies for those?
Jessica Ferrato for the record. I don't have information on what's the interactions between the insurance company and the doctors assemblyman, but I do think that this is a very specific thing that is being charged outside of the copay, right? So a patient goes to their doctor, they're paying a copay, the insurance company is paying for that visit, and then this is an additional fee that they're adding on top of that. So really that is our point exactly, is that this should be treated as any other form that's completed on behalf of a patient. Typically it's just a signature. Portion of the form is filled out by the patient. And so again, this is sort of singled out as an item that is addressed directly in fees.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open it up to testimony in support. We will go ahead and start with support in Carson City, and then we will move down to Las Vegas, then the phone lines.
For the record, my name is Mark Ellis. That's MARCELLIS. I am the President of Communication Workers of America, Local 9413. It's been a long day. I'll be brief. So in the words of the immortal Rick McCann, me too, and true that.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Chelsea Capurro, CAPURRO, on behalf of the Health Services Coalition, also a ditto in support. We want to thank the sponsor for bringing this.
Thank you, Vice Chair. For the record, my name is Susie Martinez, the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Nevada State AFL-CIO. We are in full support of this bill, and I will just tell you on a personal level, when I had FMLA from my employer, my condition never changed. So basically, all my doctor needed to do was just change the date on the form, hand it to the secretary, we were good. So just wanted to give you a little insight on that, so thank you.
Okay, seeing no one else in Carson City, we will move to Las Vegas. Anyone wishing to testify in support, please make your way to the witness table. You can begin when you're ready. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Paul Catha, P-A-U-L, last name C-A-T-H-A, representing the Culinary Workers Union Local 226. We ditto the other supporters. Thank you, and please support and pass this bill.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. My name is Juanita Figueroa, and I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. I have worked at the Smith's grocery store for over 20 years, and I have been a member of the UFCW Local 711 for just as long. I come from a large family. Growing up, I was one of 8 siblings, and I was my mom's right hand in the family, and she taught me to work hard every day. As a single mom, I was able to see my 27-year-old daughter just get married, and high fees for FMLA forms make it harder for working men and women in Nevada at a time when they are already financially and emotionally stretched with a new baby. a family member being deployed, or a serious illness. For me, it was a serious illness. 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer, and at the time, I was a single mom trying to pay my bills and raise my daughter. I had insurance at the time because of the union collectively bargains that for us, but things were tight, and I'm not sure if I will have been able to cover the cost of a $100 form on top of everything else. I can't imagine all of the other men and women in Nevada without insurance or a union that must pay these fees out of pocket just to keep their jobs. Please support AB 305 today and place a cap on this fee and ease some of the hardship men and women face in our state when taking FMLA leave. Thank you.
Ms. Figueroa, would you please spell your name for the record?
So sorry, Juanita Figueroa, Juanita Figueroa.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Eduardo Escoto, Eduardo Escoto. I am a union member of UFCW Local 711. I strongly urge the committee to support AB 305. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next presenter.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ruben Perez, Rupen Perez, and I am a union member of UFCW 711. I strongly urge in the committee to support AB 305. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Wendy Cardenas, WendyCardenas, and I am a union member to UFCW 711. I strongly urge the committee to support AB 305.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Cardenas. Next testifier.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Dion Klug, Dionneklug. I'm a union member with Local 711, and I strongly urge you to support this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Klug. Next testifier.
GINGS.
Oh, sir, could we have you start from the beginning? We lost audio for a second. If you wouldn't mind stating your name, spelling it, and then giving your testimony. Thank you.
Sure. For the record, my name is Michael Giddings. That's MichaelGittings, and I'm president of UFCW Local 711. And we strongly urge the committee to support AB 305.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in Vegas wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 305? Okay, seeing none, AVH, can we please go to the telephone line?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 305, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you wish to testify in support, please press star 9.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Russ James, RUSSJAMES. I'm with the Nevada AFL-CIO. I am in favor of Assembly Bill 305. Urge the committee to support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your call, Mr. James. AVH, next caller.
Hello, my name is Liz Sorensen. That's Liz, last name Sorenson. I'm the president of the Nevada State AFL-CIO, and I strongly urge this committee to support AB 305. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. AVH, next caller, please.
Good afternoon, members of the committee and Chairman, Madam Chairman. My name is Clarence McCarthy. I'm currently the health benefit rep for NELC letter carriers, branch 709,
in Northern Nevada, and I strongly urge the committee to support AB 305. Thank you.
Sir, if we could have you restate your first and last name and spell it for the record, please.
Oh, Clarence McCarthy, CLARENCE, MC, capital CARTHY, for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. AVH, next caller, please.
My name was Kim Renee, RENEE. I'm from South Africa. I strongly urge the committee to support AB 305. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you for your testimony. AVH, next caller, please.
Good afternoon, committee chair and committee. My name is Larry Wilson, retiree president for UAW Local 2162, and I stand in support of AB 305.
Thank you for your testimony. Next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits 000, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and committee members. My name is Ellen Marquez, ELLEN MARQUEZ. I am making comments on my own behalf and not on behalf of my employer. I am the parent of a young adult with Down syndrome. When my daughter was born in 2003 with a severe heart condition, doctors said she wouldn't survive her first year without surgery. Thanks to the Family and Medical Leave Act, FMLA, I was able to take time off without fear of losing my job. At that time, my healthcare provider did not charge me for completing FMLA paperwork, giving me peace of mind to focus on my infant daughter's health. Today, many providers charge excessive fees, sometimes up to $30 per page in cash, just to fill out these forms, often just a signature. Families already struggling with medical crises shouldn't face additional financial burdens. Healthcare providers are well compensated for their services, and capping this charge at $10 per document is a reasonable step to protect families. I urge you to support AB 305 to ensure that no one has to choose between keeping their job and affording paperwork fees. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Marquez. AVH, next caller, please.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Gabe Christensen, CHRISTENSON. I'm a member of SMART TD and the Nevada State Legislative Director. Our union strongly urges you to support Assembly Bill 305.
Thank you for your testimony. AVH, next caller.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Joseph Graham, JOSEPH-GRAHAM. I'm the Chief Steward for CWA 9413. I strongly urge the committee to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. AVH, next caller.
If you have recently joined and would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 305, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits 134, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Chair, the caller is not unmuting themselves. Would you like to move on?
Yes, please.
Okay, there are no more callers on the line to testify in support at this time.
Thank you. And if you were online and unable to get through, please know that you can still submit your written testimony to the committee secretary. We will now move to testimony in opposition. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to give opposition? Seeing none, I will move to testimony in Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition? Seeing none, AVH, can we please check the telephone line?
Vice Chair, there are no callers on the line to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you, AVH. We will now go to testimony in neutral. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to testify in the neutral position? Seeing none, we will move to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral? Seeing none, AVH, can we please check the telephone line?
Testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 305. Please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 305. Members, we will stand in a 1-minute recess.
We will now come back to order. I will now open up for public comment. Please address your remarks to issues that fall within the jurisdiction of this committee. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to provide public comment? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to provide public comment? Don't see anyone walking up. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Chair, the public lines are open and working, but we don't have anyone choosing to provide comment at this time.
Thank you. This concludes our meeting for today. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, March 12th at 1:30. This meeting's adjourned.